Welcome, and here we go again. And today it's time for another edition of the Random Reviews series. And today, or last time, I picked out the Ark in Space, the Tom Baker Series 12 story. I haven't got around to rewatching it, but I picked it out last time randomly, and gonna give it a review and see what I think of it. Anyway, so what are my thoughts of the Ark in Space? Anyway, I think personally the Ark in Space is one of the best stories of the early Tom Baker era. Now, if you've watched this channel a lot before, you'll know that the Hinchcliffe era of the show is one of my favourites of the entire show, if not my favourite. I think it's sort of up there with stuff like the RTD era and the John Pertwee era. And I just adore it. This is one of the few which doesn't really have any gothic horror sort of origins to it, because most of the stories from this era took inspiration from those gothic horror stories like Frankenstein or Jekyll and Hyde or The Mummy or whatever it was. And this one didn't, but it's one of my favourites of those first three series of the Tom Baker era, and one of my favourites of the 70s. It's not one that gets talked about much. It's sort of very underrated, I'd say. And I would say it's a 5 out of 5. I would. I'd go as far as to say it's 10 out of 10, 5 out of 5. Superb stuff. Besides the questionable bubble wrap effects for the monsters, which don't interfere with my enjoyment of the story. And I've watched this story twice, 3 times, I think. They just probably would deteriorate the score for people who aren't used to Classic Who, because there's a lot of people who hate the effects, and that gets in the way. And I'm not going to talk about those people, but that's the sort of bubble wrap effect is the only bad thing. It's the only thing that is weak about the story, but it doesn't by any means detract from my score or make it bad or anything like that. I always forget if this one's a 4-parter or a 6-parter. I should have looked that up in advance. I don't know why it is, but I always think, is Ark in Space 4 parts or is it 6 parts? Anyway, either way, it's perfectly paced throughout. It's actually got quite a bit of action for a Classic Who story, because a lot of Classic Who stories are quite slow, but it's very eventful. It keeps up its pace. It's well structured as a story. And the story's very interesting. It also sets up for the story arc for Series 12, and there's various things I like about that. I like that we go back to the Nerva base, and in stories like the Sontaran Experiment, and in stories like Revenge of the Cybermen, we get to see sort of the aftermath of these events, or the beforemath, or the relation to it. And I love that. I love that we sort of all the stories sort of link together in this series, which is a rarity for Classic Who. It's a very subtle link, but it's nice and it's there. And also, we get rid of the TARDIS, so we have quite unique ways of travelling from destination to destination, which is very interesting. And I just really thoroughly enjoy that idea. It really makes it a challenge to write, a really sort of intriguing to watch and see. But in terms of villains, the Wirrn are quite cool. I mean, aesthetically they're not brilliant, but they're good villains. They're interesting villains. I quite enjoy them. The supportive cast are pretty good. They're not particularly relevant. I think my favourite part of it is part 1, in which it's just really the Doctor, Sarah, and Harry. And Doctor, Sarah, and Harry, brilliant team. Once again, in this story, they're fantastic. One of my favourite teams of Classic Who. Harry's obviously not up to the standards of the Fourth Doctor and Sarah Jane and all that, but he's a good third wheel there, and there's some really interesting sort of dynamics between them, and I just thoroughly enjoy all their interactions. and they are such a gleeful bunch of characters, and it's really nice to see them here. And I'd say this is the second best story of Series 12. Series 12, Season 12, indeed, just to avoid confusion. I'd say Genesis of the Daleks is better, but I prefer it to stories like Robot and Sontaran Experiment and Revenge of the Cybermen. And I think as a series, it's good. I haven't reviewed any of the others yet, but it's a good series that doesn't really get appreciated enough, but it's appreciated a bit, but not enough. So yeah, there's not a great deal to say about the Arkham Space, so I'll keep this review very quick. But it's just great, isn't it? It's really good, and I thoroughly enjoy it. I really do. So, what do you think about the Arkham Space? Please let me know. It'd be nice to hear your thoughts on the whole thing. And, I'll be back with another random or review. And that will be on Monday. So, Monday I'll be watching Utopia. Tuesday I'll be watching the other one. Sound of Drums on Wednesday. And on Friday, I will be reviewing The Last of the Time Lords. So it's going to be a week of Series 3 finale reviews. That's going to be quite interesting. So tune in there on Monday for the first of those. And they'll be more interesting than this review was. So thank you for tuning in today. Please leave your thoughts of Arkham Space below. And I'll be back another time. I'll see you there.